We've quoted this verse for centuries. We preached it at ordinations, invoked it in doctrinal debates, and leaned on it when institutions tremble. The gates of Hades shall not prevail against it. But almost every time we repeat it, we instinctively assume it's about us, our survival, our institutions, our influence, our durability against enemies. And in doing so, we may be doing exactly what Jesus warned against in the same passage. We may be hearing the words while missing the revelation. Because in Matthew 16, Jesus is not reassuring an organization about its long-term viability. He's standing at the edge of his own rejection and death. The issue on the table is revelation, who he is, and whether that revelation can be overturned. If we begin with ourselves, we'll read this verse as a promise of institutional continuity. If we begin where Jesus begins, with the Father's disclosure that he is the Messiah, then the meaning shifts entirely. In the Gospel of Matthew 16:18, Jesus says, "On this rock I will build my assembly, and the gates of Hades shall not prevail against it." The key expressions are gates, Hades, and will prevail. Most conventional readings take these as pointing primarily to something within the created or historical order. First, many interpret the phrase as a promise that death itself will not defeat the church. Hades is understood as the realm of the dead. The gates symbolize the imprisoning power of death. The meaning then becomes death will not ultimately overcome Christ's people. Resurrection guarantees survival. Second, some emphasize the imagery of gates as defensive structures. In that case, the church is pictured as advancing against the stronghold of death. The realm of Hades cannot withstand the advance of the gospel. The focus is on mission and expansion. Third, others understand Hades more broadly as the domain of Satan or demonic power. The gates of hell become shorthand for spiritual opposition. The promise assures believers that satanic forces will not destroy the church. Fourth, in Roman Catholic theology especially, the verse is read in terms of institutional continuity. It becomes a guarantee that the church founded on Peter can't formally fall into doctrinal corruption. The gates of Hades are interpreted as heresy, apostasy, or institutional collapse. Fifth, some scholars situate the imagery within Jewish apocalyptic expectation. The language of the gates of Sheol appears in Second Temple literature. In that framework, the statement means that the end-time community will not be confined by the power of death. Now, notice what all these interpretations share. They focus on realities within our sphere. Death, institutions, historical endurance, spiritual conflicts conceived in terms of forces operating inside the created order. Even when the language is elevated, the interpretive center remains in things we can observe: survival, expansion, preservation, and triumph. Now, that instinct isn't surprising. We tend to interpret spiritual language in terms of realities we can measure or manage. Gates become physical structures. Hades becomes a place. Will prevail becomes visible success or failure. The transcendent is pulled downward and made to orbit the human realm. Then, having grounded the meaning there, we attempt to lift it back up. But the orientation has already shifted. The text is read through our world rather than our world being interpreted through revelation. Now, in Matthew 16, Jesus asks, "Who do men say that I am?" The answers are prophetic categories. John the Baptist, Elijah, Jeremiah, one of the prophets. Then Peter confesses, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." Jesus replies, "Flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven." That sentence governs everything that follows. The decisive issue is revelation. Recognition of Jesus as Messiah does not originate in human reasoning or social momentum. It is the result of divine disclosure. When Jesus says, "On this rock I will build my assembly," or my church, we are not talking here about personality in abstraction. The emphasis is not on Peter as an individual apart from what just happened. The rock is the revealed recognition that Jesus fulfills what Moses and the prophets said would come. The assembly exists wherever that recognition exists. Now, immediately after that, in 1621, Jesus announces that he must go to Jerusalem, suffer, be killed, and be raised on the third day. The cross enters the scene without delay. So whatever the gates of Hades means, it must be read in light of a foretold death. Now consider the prophetic backdrop. Isaiah 53 speaks of the servant being cut off out of the land of the living, yet also of him prolonging his days and seeing the fruit of his suffering. Psalm 16 declares that God will not abandon his Holy One to Sheol. Daniel 9 says the Anointed One will be cut off. The pattern is already embedded in Israel's scriptures. The Messiah suffers death, yet death does not have the final word. Against that background, the gates of Hades do not first direct us to medieval imagery or merely to biological immortality. Hades represents the realm and condition of confinement under death's authority. Gates symbolize ruling power, judicial control, but in this context, they describe more than physical death. They signify the entrenched resistance of a realm closed to revelation. Throughout Israel's history, divine disclosure meets opposition. Prophets are rejected, light is resisted, revelation is suppressed. The gates of Hades name that authoritative, anti-revelational condition, the structured resistance of the carnal order against the disclosure of who the Messiah truly is. Will prevail speaks of overpowering, suppressing, and neutralizing. The question embedded in Matthew 16 is therefore not simply whether believers will die. It's whether the revelation that Jesus is the Messiah can be nullified by rejection, execution, and apparent defeat. If the Messiah is cut off, does that falsify the confession? Jesus' answer is that it does not. The authority of death and the resistance bound up with it will not overpower the assembly built on the Father's disclosure. Isaiah already said the servant would be cut off. Daniel already anticipated the removal of the Anointed One. Psalm 16 already declared that he would not be abandoned to Sheol. Death is not a contradiction of the revelation. It is part of the prophetic pattern. The gates close around him. The tomb is sealed. From the standpoint of the visible order, Hades appears to prevail, but the resurrection exposes the limitation of that authority. The realm that attempted to contain him cannot hold him. The prophetic word has already charted the outcome. Because the assembly, the church, is formed by recognizing that fulfillment, it stands on the same ground. Its security is not first institutional, nor dependent upon human management. It rests on the fact that what the Father has revealed and brought to pass in history cannot be overturned by the order that resists it. Physical death, persecution, and historical struggle are real. But they are secondary expressions of a deeper conflict. They must be interpreted through the lens of revelation, not used as the lens itself. The gates of Hades shall not prevail means that the authoritative resistance of an anti-revelational order cannot nullify the community constituted by the Father's disclosure of the Messiah. The carnal realm attempts to suppress what exposes it. It attempts to seal revelation in a tomb. Yet what God has revealed and fulfilled in the Messiah cannot be undone by the very realm that opposed it. So what does that mean for Christianity and the church today? It means that we are in danger of reading this verse as if it were a guarantee about our structures rather than a declaration about revelation. We quote it when denominations fracture. We cite it when membership declines. We appeal to it when we want assurance that our version of Christianity will outlast cultural hostility. But in Matthew 16, the promise is not anchored in our ability to preserve something. It is anchored in the Father's disclosure of who the Son is and in the prophetic fulfillment that even death cannot overturn. Here's the uncomfortable implication here. If the assembly is built on revealed recognition of the Messiah as the fulfillment of what Moses and the prophets said would come, then the church is secure only insofar as it stands there. Not on sentiment, not on tradition detached from fulfillment, not on institutional lineage, not on moral influence, not on political strength. We read past this because we prefer guarantees about visible continuity. We want assurance that our buildings, our hierarchies, our programs, and our cultural footprint will not collapse. But Jesus' promise is not about preservation of what we construct or can instruct. It is about the indestructibility of what the Father has revealed and vindicated in the Messiah. The gates represent the entrenched resistance of a realm that does not want revelation. That resistance is not ancient only, it is present whenever the confession, "You are the Messiah," is emptied of its prophetic substance and reduced to a slogan or identity marker. When revelation is muted, when the fulfillment is sidelined, when the Messiah is abstracted from the prophetic word that defined him, the church does not need to be attacked from the outside. It has already shifted its foundation. The tragedy is not that the gates of Hades will prevail over Christ's assembly. They will not. The tragedy is that we often assume we are that assembly while standing on something else. So this text forces a question on the church today. Are we built on the Father's disclosure that Jesus fulfilled what was promised? Is our faith grounded in recognized prophetic fulfillment? Or have we made the verse about protecting our own realm? We have been reading this promise as if it were about our durability. It is about the invincibility of revelation. And whenever that revelation is recognized, confessed, and held fast, no resistance, not rejection, not death, not cultural hostility can overturn what God has disclosed and brought to pass in his Messiah. Everything else is secondary. And that is precisely what we have been reading past.